remember he's pretend. Oh, what a summer to lie under me on a glass, or to me as I ask for your number. Oh, would you wonder why if I paid $100 for the chance to see you cry, and 100 more to see you cry again instead of singing? No, no, body's warmer to the touch than but you'll never know, no, anything as cold as the heart of a city girl. As the heart of a city girl. As the heart of a...
All right, we're back for the second hour of Listen In with David Davis and Angela Miner. We should be getting a phone call just any minute from our next guest, Linda Sherrill. You want to...
David, she's running for the U.S. House of Representatives for the Congress in Washington. She's the candidate from the 4th District of Bradley County, and Bradley County is actually divided into 2 districts for this race, and she will be running against, or she is running against, the incumbent Scott DesJarlais. So we're expecting her to give us a call, and she's ready to answer some tough questions for us.
And we are hopeful to have Congressman DesJarlais on the program at some point, but he's recovering from a very serious illness, and
right.
Don't know if he'll be able to do much campaigning even. So I think we have her.
And we have a call coming in.
Good morning. You're live on WHIP FM.
Oh, hi. This is Linda Sherrill calling in.
Oh, well, we're expecting you.
Hello, Linda Sherrill. Angela Miner here with David Davis. You're live on the air.
Hi, Angela. How are you?
I'm well, Linda. How are you?
Doing great.
Well, let's go ahead and get started. Tell our listeners a little bit about your background, if you don't mind, please.
Sure. Well, I live in Monteagle, Tennessee, on the Cumberland Plateau. I am the nominee for Congress in Tennessee's 4th District. I grew up on the Cumberland Plateau in a little community called Pleasant Hill. I also lived in Sparta, which is in White County, and graduated from White County High School. After that, I attended MTSU and graduated from there. I have a background as a certified public accountant. I spent my professional career in Chattanooga as an auditor and a controller, and retired from that and moved to Monteagle, and have served all of my life in community organizations, and out of that grew this interest in running for Congress and trying to take that involvement that I had in making communities better into the public policy realm.
Okay, why are you running specifically for this seat, Linda?
You know, Angela, I was fortunate enough to grow up during the golden age of the American dream. My parents were able to save for college for me and my brother, buy a house, raise a family, put money aside for retirement. And they weren't wealthy. My dad was a rural mail carrier. My mom was a school teacher and a librarian. And what I see today is that Americans and people in Tennessee are working more than ever and have less to show for it because of policies made by out-of-touch politicians in Washington. It seems that no matter how many hours they work, many mothers and fathers all over this district are barely making enough for rent and food. And, you know, I see that working families don't even have an even playing field because the rules are made to benefit a few, not all of us. And, you know, Washington has become hyper-partisan with our elected officials staying on the sidelines and casting votes based on party lines or sometimes in these past sessions, not even voting at all. And this gridlock is killing our American way of life. The American dream that I grew up with has, for my children, become an American tragedy. My husband, Jim, and I have 4 grandchildren, and their ages 2 to 11, and I know that they won't have the same opportunities my husband and I did unless we do something about it.
Just getting back to the American dream for just a second, I saw a graph this morning. I can't remember who it's from, but it said that for the first time in the nation's history, 10% of Americans have 50% of the wealth, or maybe I think that's what it was. 10%, 50% of the wealth goes to 10% of Americans, where 90% of Americans, get the other 50%. It's a gap that's closed, and it's a gap that's getting bigger, and it just kind of relates to what you were saying about the American dream not being the American dream anymore. And I guess what I'm asking is, what is an example of some of the policies that need to be changed? Is it income tax or what?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's time to raise the minimum wage. The proposal in Congress right now is to raise the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour. And, for women especially, this is important. Women represent 60% of our minimum wage workers. So that means that a woman, or any minimum wage worker, but 60% of those are women, can work full-time, year-round, at the minimum wage rate that we have here in Tennessee, which is $7.25 an hour. That's the federal minimum, and that's what Tennessee has. And she will make less than $15,000 a year. On that salary, she may support one or more child, and also be trying to help her parents and maybe other relatives. And the extra money from that raise in the minimum wage would help families get from barely surviving to at least surviving. Studies show that during this recent economic recovery that we've been experiencing since 2008, that more low-wage jobs were created during that time. And we're seeing even more educated people with these types of jobs now, which, they were once considered sort of short-term summer jobs or after-school jobs for our high school students or students in college. On the other hand, you look at some of the studies, and economists say that communities that adopted a minimum wage increase experienced what they commonly refer to as a positive multiplier effect. And that means that workers, when they get that raise, spend that extra income putting it right back into the local economy, whatever they've earned. So when people shop at your local mom and pop or buy groceries at the Piggly Wiggly and Monteagle, they're actually creating jobs for the companies that are selling those products, those groceries or gas, or, it's not like they're putting that money into savings accounts. They're putting it right back into the local economy, and that's boosting the local economy. So it's that kind of effect that raising the minimum wage would have.
So Seattle is the one that I've heard most about that raised their minimum wage. Is the jury still out on that, or has it had that effect that you were just talking about?
it has had that effect, and I believe they have raised theirs to something like $15 an hour.
Yes, ma'am.
Of course, Seattle is in a different part of the country, and their cost of living is very, very, very much higher than what we have here. And states have the ability to raise that minimum wage to whatever they choose and deem it necessary. But the problem is, over the years, our minimum wage has not kept up with inflation, and that's part of the pinch that middle-class Americans are feeling, because inflation has gone on regardless of whether our wages have gone up, and families are finding themselves now at the end of the month with coming short. Participation in food banks are up. People are having to step up in our communities to help their neighbors who are coming up short at the end of the month. And it's, just because we have not done what we needed to do throughout the years and raised that minimum wage to keep up with just the cost of living in this country.
Now, your position as a candidate for Congress is as a fiscal conservative. Now, can you differentiate your position in regards to the incumbent DesJarlais?
Sure. Scott DesJarlais and I could not be more different. There are so many measures that he has voted for or against that illustrate this point. But one example that defines his priorities best is his vote for a bill, against a bill that would have prohibited members of Congress from receiving retroactive pay when Congress fails to pass a budget on time. I mean, that is one of the primary duties of Congress, is to pass a budget. And they can't seem to pass it on time, if at all. 8 months later, Scott DesJarlais voted against giving a 1.6% raise to soldiers who risk their lives every day fighting the war on terror in Afghanistan. And, I just believe that our district deserves someone who is principled and has integrity. And when I was an auditor, I was a CPA, I was entrusted with $1 million budgets. I promised to manage that money and balance accounts, and I kept that promise. Just as in my professional life, when I earned the respect of clients and colleagues and coworkers, I will do the same thing in Congress. I'll pass budgets that are balanced and on time, and work to author bills and introduce bills that improve the lives and the quality of life of people here in Tennessee, and keep my promises to voters.
Okay. Just as a reminder, I'd like to say that we're talking to Linda Sherrill. She's the Democratic candidate for the 4th Congressional District. She's running against incumbent Congressman Scott DesJarlais. And anyway, nobody even considers that a Democrat has a chance to. Nobody even talks about a Democrat winning. So what makes you think you can win?
Well, we know that we're going to have to fight for every vote in this district. So our team, our volunteers, our supporters are continuing to register people to vote, knocking on doors, organizing phone banks, calling voters, letting them know who I am and what I stand for, hosting house meetings. And our Linda Listens tour was hugely successful as a result of traveling across this vast district, and it is big. It goes all the way from Cleveland all the way almost to Nashville.
There are 16 counties, is that correct?
16 counties.
Mm-hmm.
16 counties. And in our listening tour, we visited all 16 counties. And as part of that tour, I learned about the challenges our communities are facing and the issues that we need to address. And I'm talking to voters, and I want them to know that it doesn't matter whether they live in a rural area like where I live or in larger cities like Cleveland and Murfreesboro. Their voices will always be heard, and their circumstances, no matter where they live, are equally important. So we're talking to voters in all 16 counties, and everywhere I go, what I hear voters saying is that they're ready for a change. And I am very excited to give them that opportunity. When they start voting on October 15th, they know that they have a choice.
Now, I have heard your race mentioned on national news media outlets, and have you received support from the National Democratic Party? Are they helping you at all?
The state Democratic Party is helping us. The National Democratic Party is helping us. They are on weekly calls with us. They're watching this race. As you know, for the Democrats, to pick up 17 seats in the House of Representatives would give us the opportunity to have control of the House. Whether that will happen or not remains to be seen, but this race is certainly competitive.
The primary for the Republican side of this went undecided for several weeks. It was a very close race. Did that affect you in any way? How you've structured your campaign, or?
Well, you know, I really was prepared for a competitive race all along, regardless of who the primary winner was. I think a lot of people were surprised that Dr. Desjardins came out the winner, and of course, it was very close. He won by 38 votes after all of the votes were counted and certified. And we knew we had to fight for every vote. So as we head into the final stretch, after the primary, that was part of our unique American democratic process. And so when people say it doesn't matter if I vote or not, ask Dr. Desjardins if it matters whether they vote or not. 38 votes was a very slim margin out of almost 100,000 votes cast. In the primary, it came down to 38 votes. Regardless of who my opponent was going to be, my goal was to present a campaign that was worthy of voters and a campaign that is positive, whereas my opponent seems to want to use issues to divide voters. I'm focusing my campaign on uniting us, and there are thousands in our district, as I talk to them, who feel that they have not been represented well. They're the silent majority, and it's time for their voices to be heard. So whoever won the primary, Jim Tracy or Scott Desjardins, I really saw them as very similar. They did not distinguish themselves between each other. They voted very similarly on the issues, so they were not that different. And we were prepared with our listening tour regardless of who won the Republican primary. So it really didn't change our plans at all.
All right, David, if we could just change gears for a second here. I was a teacher, and I'm very concerned about education. I think education gives you the tools to move forward with your life. That is my core belief about education. On that topic, what role can and should the federal government take in the future to help our students succeed?
Angela, that's one of my priorities in this campaign. I'm a mother and a grandmother. I have a 5-year-old granddaughter who just started kindergarten this year. She benefited from a robust preschool program, and she's now in kindergarten, learning to read, loving every minute of it. I want that for every child in this country and for every child in this district. And that involves having programs available for these children from cradle all the way through to their career. Should they choose to go to college or enter a career directly out of high school, they need to be prepared for that every step of the way. We have some of the best teachers here in Tennessee, and they are dedicated and committed to educating our children, and we can do nothing less than invest in those schools and invest in those teachers, give them the support and the resources that they need to do what they do best, and that is educate our children. And I have to mention, because it's fresh on my mind, I was just at MTSU last night. This is my alma mater, Middle Tennessee State University in Murfreesboro, the Blue Raiders.
Yay.
And I was with a lot of students last night over at MTSU. One of the things that's happening with our college students is that they are coming out of college, many of them, with debt in the form of student loans.
Right.
Nationwide, that debt averages somewhere from $26,000 to $29,000 when they come out of school. They have that responsibility sitting on their plate. Nationally, 37 million owe more than $1 trillion in student debt. And what that means for our economy is that if they're paying down a loan, that means less money that they have for a down payment for a house or a car, to say nothing of putting away money, to save for their own children's college education or their own retirement. So, one of the things I think that we can do instead of cutting Pell Grants is to invest in Pell Grants. We need to reward schools if they help low-income students, if they keep costs low and work on getting large number of students graduating with degrees. But let's not penalize our students and their families who are simply trying to improve their lives by getting a better job and getting a 2 to 4 year degree coming out of college. At the very least, we should allow our graduates with high interest rate loans to refinance those loans at lower rates.
Well, in that regard, well, first of all, Tennessee's done pretty good with community college on the community college level, haven't we?
Yes, we have, and the community colleges all across the state are offering some amazing programs in the STEM subjects, especially science, technology, engineering, and math. And those graduates are coming out, some of them even, with a 17-week program, for instance, in mechatronics. I'm familiar with, where employers are just clamoring for a workforce that has those skills, and the community colleges are meeting those needs. And I applaud what Governor Haslam has done in making those types of programs more affordable for our high school graduates in Tennessee.
And another thing on affordability, I don't know if it's a problem or not, but I know of at least one corporation whose primary business is student loans that has bought a bank. Is that a big problem, or is it just a localized problem that I heard about? Or I guess corporations making money off of student loans. I don't understand how you would separate all of that and lower interest rates and everything.
I'm not familiar with the particular instance which you're talking about, but again, my overall position is that we should not penalize our students who are just trying to improve their lives. And whatever we need to do to assure that those students have access to the education that they're seeking so that they can get a better job when they graduate is what we need to do. And again, that has an economic impact on our state, Because if we have our graduates prepared for the kinds of skills that employers are looking for, that will attract those businesses, those manufacturers, those employers into our state, because they will come looking for our graduates. So it's not just the right thing to do in terms of educating our students. It's the smart thing to do for our state's economy.
I don't think you can talk about education without talking about Common Core. So, so is Common Core, is it a bad thing, or is it just something that's got a bad rap, or what? Where do you come down with? What's your opinion on what Common Core is and what's the effects?
Well, you're right, Daryl. It's a hot topic right now. It's become very politicized. I met with a group of teachers yesterday, and that was a topic. I mean, it's something that they're concerned about. The Common Core standards are simply that. They are standards. It grew out of a movement, really, that Tennessee was on the forefront back in as early as 2006, 2007, when the Chamber of Commerce actually, I was surprised to learn this, but the Chamber of Commerce had actually given Tennessee a failing grade for truth in advertising, because we were saying that our students were prepared for college when they left our high schools, when in truth, actually only about 20% were. And so our governor and other governors, it wasn't just Tennessee, there were other states that had the same result. And so they realized that this was an economic problem for their states, that we needed to have students who were prepared to attract those jobs, those higher-paying jobs into our state. So they came together, and out of that grew this movement to create a set of common standards that could be implemented across the country in all states, so that our students in Tennessee were held to the same standards as students in Kentucky or Michigan or California or Florida. That we could say as a nation, when our students graduate, this is the skills that they have, and they're competent in these skills. Now, you know, there are some people who say that that Common Core is something that is being forced on the states by the federal government. It's not. It grew out of this movement that started at the ground level with the governors. What I hear is that from teachers is the way it's being implemented is a problem with them. I mean, for one thing, most of them like the Common Core standards. It's a little bit of a shift in teaching skills that students need for these 21st century jobs. So there's an emphasis on problem solving and critical thinking skills. So that, you know, I often tell a story about the first job that I had out of high school was standing in front of a bagging machine. I worked in a shirt factory, and all day long I put shirts in plastic bags. That's done by a machine today. So you need employees now who can program those machines, who can troubleshoot those machines when they go awry, who can maintain the functioning of those machines. And that involves critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, and those are the skills that our graduates need to come out of school possessing. So the problem right now is that teachers tell me that the Common Core standards that they're teaching are not being tested with tests that align with the skills that they're teaching. And the students are being over-tested. The testing is taking away time out of their classroom. And their employment, their licensure, has been tied to test results that kids take on one day. And their pay is being tied to test results. So that's the issue with Common Core, but the standards themselves are not the boogeyman. I think that people, that has been unfairly represented.
Because it doesn't teachers aren't forced to teach a particular content. It's a particular skill that you're trying to teach under Common Core.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's move on to something else. I need to mention that you're listening to WOOP FM 99.9, and we're streaming live on www.woopfm.com. And we're talking to Linda Sherrill. She's a Democratic candidate for the 4th Congressional District in the U.S. Congress. But anyway, we move on to another subject. You want to talk about veterans for a little bit?
Sure.
I mean,
You have a particular...
well, locally, we want to build a veterans home. So if you're elected to Congress, the first thing you need to do is build us a home. And then, secondly, the furor over the Veterans Administration hospitals. Do you have any idea where that's going to go? Or what's going to happen to the VA? Is it going to be, I know a lot of people would like to just privatize it or give vouchers or and just kind of do away with the VA hospitals. But where do you see it headed?
The VA, when I talk to veterans, once you're in the system, the VA really does a good job of providing benefits. I think that the furor that has arisen lately over the wait time for veterans to qualify for those benefits has been something that has been really inexcusable. And I think Congress did take the right action on being sure that those wait times are reduced. I heard of a bill recently that was a bipartisan bill that actually Republicans and Democrats came together to integrate the medical information systems of the VA and the Defense Department by 2017, and that will go a long way toward vastly reducing those wait times. But in the meantime, veterans are able to go outside the VA system and get the services they need, the health care services that they need.
Well, there's a condition to that, though. I mean, I think they have to live 40 miles from a health center.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, and therefore it would be very good to have something in Cleveland, right?
Either that, or I should move 10 miles further away from Chattanooga.
Well, let me just say, my dad was a World War II veteran, and he served. He was actually in the China-Burma-India theater for 3 years, and he was an airplane mechanic. I grew up in the Vietnam era. A lot of my friends fought in Vietnam, and I lost some friends in Vietnam. And I am so grateful for their service, for your service. And I'm deeply committed to our servicemen and women and to our veterans. One of my priorities in Congress will be to protect the benefits that they have earned through increased funding for veterans' medical care to the VA, including treatment for PTSD, traumatic brain injury. I will work to streamline that process of filing claims with the VA and try to prevent backlogs and get our veterans and their families the benefits that they've earned and deserve. Now, beyond health benefits, transition into the workforce, I know, has been a challenge as Tennessee continues to struggle with our economy. And I would really want to work on legislation that gives small businesses the tax credits for hiring unemployed veterans and improve education and job training programs to help veterans translate the skills that they bring from their time in the service to jobs back home. But, you know, we as Tennesseans are indebted to the men and women, excuse me, to the men and women who have served our nation, and we owe it to them to help in any way we can.
You can stop and take a drink of water if you want to.
It's my early morning voice. You know, it's 9 o'clock here in Middle Tennessee.
You should make all of Tennessee in the central time zone and just eliminate the eastern time zone, or make them change the TV schedule so I don't have to stay up so late.
Well, still on the domestic front, heard David mention the word voucher. Now that some elected officials in Congress have proposed converting Medicare to voucher and possibly raising the age of eligibility for Social Security. Do you have a position on those two?
Well, yes. Let me say first of all,
Well, share those with us then.
you know, my promise to seniors is that I will do everything I can to protect Medicare and fight against any attempt at raising the eligibility age for Social Security. Going back to the American dream, promises, you know, the promise of the American dream, okay, is that if you work hard and you play by the rules, you'll find a good-paying job, you can raise your family, pay your taxes, and have the ability to retire with dignity. Social Security is one of our country's most successful programs, and it has allowed thousands of America's seniors to stay out of poverty in their retirement. So for many of Tennessee's seniors, Social Security and Medicare serve as a crucial lifeline to a quality of life and health care in their retirement years. Converting Medicare to a voucher system would force many seniors who live on a fixed income, by the way, to pay more out of their pocket for their health care. And that is just something we can't let happen.
Well, I think we're probably about the same age, so I appreciate that. But what about? I want to go back to the American dream again, and the minimum wage. If you raise it to $10.10 an hour, then what happens to the person who's already making $11 or $12? It raises the it seems like it would raise the lower income. It seems like it would lower their boat instead of raise it.
Well, you know, I go back to the thought that a rising tide lifts all boats, actually. And when you have more money going back into the local economy and people are buying more goods and services in your local economy, the income of that business is going up. That multiplier effect is raising the revenue for the business. Yes, their expense is going up from raising the minimum wage, but the money that is going back into those businesses more than makes up for the raise in the minimum wage.
But it's not gonna raise my wages from $11 to $15. Though
it's not going to be. Yeah, you're right. It's not going to be required, but you know, the hope would be that because the employer's bottom line is improving, that there would be some discretionary room there for the employer to raise your wage as well.
Okay.
On the topic of the American dream, I think this also falls in that category. There are 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country, according to my source here. What is your position on our country's immigration policies, and do you have ideas for like strategies you would be willing to support?
I really am concerned about blanket unilateral executive decisions on immigration reform. I think that would be wrong. I believe that decision rests with Congress, and our country needs bipartisan, comprehensive reform of our nation's broken immigration system with strong and sensible legislation that aligns with the well-being and needs of our district. Senator Bob Corker presented what I consider to be a good, tough border security amendment to one of the Senate bills, which moves immigration reform in the right direction. That amendment requires an electronic visa entry-exit system, adds another 20,000 Border Patrol agents along our southern border. It implements a surveillance system that's been requested by our agents, and it requires all employers to use E-Verify. And most importantly, as an accountant, one of the things I like about the proposal is that the Congressional Budget Office estimates that the amended legislation would reduce the deficit by billions of dollars, $900 billion over the next 20 years. So it's that kind of sensible legislation that I think we can work on as Republicans and Democrats together to fix our broken immigration system. I'll always be on the side of protecting our borders, but there are many immigrants in this country who have come here for a better life. They're a part of our communities, and our process needs to be streamlined in a way that gives them a fair shot at becoming American citizens while protecting the sanctity of our borders.
Well, I think it's something that you can work on, but I guess it's another question is if Congress will work on it in a political manner rather than in a partisan manner. I get so tired of hearing about the lack of movement, and Congress says that they've got 40 bills that they've sent to the Senate that the Democrats haven't acted on, and the Senate says, well, the House sends us these bills that they know good and well is not going to get passed, and can't you just stop it?
David, that is one of the top, when people ask me, why I'm running and what are the issues that I'm hearing that people are concerned about, number one, I'll have to say jobs in the economy. People are worried about having good jobs that pay a fair wage so that they can support their family. But right behind that, and maybe even equal to it, is this frustration with Congress not being able to get anything done. And, they're fed up and they're frustrated about it. It doesn't seem that they're listening and representing the people who they're supposed to be representing. They're more concerned about sound bites and talking points and following the party line than they are listening to their constituents and listening to each other. I've never run for office before, but I've had a 28-year career as an accountant and an auditor and a controller and a CFO. And I worked with many organizations and many boards of trustees where they had very different ideas about what the solution might be to a particular problem. And one of the things I learned in my professional career in the private sector was that when those groups came together, they agreed, first of all, on what the problem was. And then they set a goal of fixing that problem. And the key to getting there was that they were willing to sit and listen to each other. They started out with a goal, and then each person was able to say what his or her solution was to that problem. And they also were not afraid to say, I don't know what you're talking about. Tell me more about what you're talking about as a solution. And when you think about it, when you listen to someone else who has a different solution, you might actually learn something. They might have a solution that you have never thought about that might actually work better than what your solution is. In actuality, what really happens is they come up with a solution that is the very best solution to the particular challenge that they're facing, and it's a combination of everyone's ideas. But that doesn't happen unless you're willing to listen to each other, listen respectfully, and really hear each other. You know, you just can't go in one ear and out the other. You have to thoughtfully consider what the other side is proposing. And that's what I think needs to happen in Congress. And frankly, those are the skills that I think I bring to the table from my background in the private sector.
So, could you vote your conscience and not get caught up in the party structure?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This district does not belong to a particular party. It doesn't belong to an elected official. It belongs to the people of this district. And my commitment is to proposing legislation, voting for legislation that improves the quality of life for the people in our district. I mean, you know, as I said before, Tennesseans are working harder than ever and have less to show for it. They're spending more hours on the job and ending up with less. And I can be an independent voice for those Tennesseans and will always, always cast a vote based on what's in the best interest of their quality of life and for the people that I represent. I can do a good job representing those voters because I am not a career politician. I have real-world experience balancing multi-million-dollar budgets, working with those who don't agree with me, and I have a moral obligation to voters to work toward public policy and legislation that improves their lives.
Well, let's see. I have to ask you one more thing. And have you been following ISIL, ISIS, the Islamic States, or the Middle East? How are we going to get out of there? Would you vote to send American troops to the Middle East?
You know, David, I think we need to be very, very careful about that. You know, my highest priority, number one, is keeping every American safe. But I also believe that the United States cannot always act as the world's law enforcement agency. I generally, at this point, right now, I'm opposed to putting our troops on the ground and in harm's way. But there are times when targeted military action is necessary to achieve stability and security. But we need to be mindful of protecting our U.S. personnel and our interests, whether it's in the Middle East or elsewhere in the world. I mean, that's the hot spot right now, but there are other places throughout the world that are unstable. I believe the United States is doing the right thing right now and doing whatever is necessary to curtail the rise of the Islamic State. And they are they're terrorists, and they will do anything that they can, as we've seen, to terrorize not only us but their neighbors. And in the last months, our military, along with support from other Arab states, have achieved some success with an aggressive campaign against these extremists. I noticed today that Turkey is actually voting on whether or not they will be joining this coalition in the Middle East, and I think that could be a real potential game changer because it's that joint effort that is going to have success in destroying these ISIL targets.
Well, they may have to join whether they want to or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I believe in an effective military strategy, but I also believe that it does need to involve those regional allies. We've got Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Bahrain, and Turkey, I hope, does join that coalition. And the power of that coalition will demonstrate that there's a credible and united front that can address these extremists, and that we have broad support to return to peace and stability in that region.
What would be the first thing you would do when you get to Congress? Everybody seems to want to know the answer to that. That's a common question, so I'm asking you. What's the first thing you would do when you get to Congress?
Well, first of all, my guiding principle, again, will be working on legislation to protect and preserve the American dream. Tennesseans, again, are working as hard as they ever have and spending more hours on the job. And, basics like food and college loans, transportation, rent, mortgage eat up a larger chunk of their salaries than ever before. I will work to protect Social Security and Medicare for our seniors. I want to vote to pass equal pay for equal work so that my granddaughters have the same rights and opportunities as my grandson. I want to ensure that Tennesseans have access to quality and affordable health care, and I will want to fight for our military and our veterans. And, I believe, again, with my strong accounting background and my experience in the private sector, I just can't wait to get started to show Congress that we can manage a responsible budget while investing wisely, and that we can work with people across the aisle who bring different ideas to the table, that we can make smart financial decisions to help our families who are just trying to figure out how to make ends meet, and that we can figure out how to balance being good parents and productive employees and how to live our lives with dignity and pride. So that's what I want to do. The voters of this district will always know that they can proudly call me, Linda, someone who shares and represents their values. And I just can't wait to get started, Angela.
Well, that sounds like a busy first day. Is there any other topic you would like to mention that we have not covered as we wrap up here today?
The only other thing I would like to say is that early voting starts October 15th. Tennessee is one of those states that offers voters the opportunity to early vote, and I would encourage everyone to do that. If you're not registered to vote, the deadline to vote, to register to vote, is October 6th. You can go to your local election commission. We have volunteers in all of our counties who are registering voters. So register to vote and vote. If you don't vote, you have no right to complain about the results because someone else will be voting and deciding who represents you and what policies they are voting for.
If voters want to learn more about you after your wonderful interview on the radio or get involved with your campaign, where can they go for that information?
They can go to my website, which is lindaSherrill.com, and let me spell that, LendaSherrill. There's no I's in my name. Every time you want to write an I, write an E. LendaSherrill.com. We have a Facebook page. If you're on Facebook, Linda Sherrill for Congress.
All right. Well, I guess that just about wraps us up. And I appreciate you so much for calling in, Linda, and talking with us for this hour. And I just want you to know that this is the first time I've answered the phone here at the studio and did it successfully. So,
And you're still on the line. It's a good day. Well, I would like to thank Linda Sherrill, U.S. congressional candidate from the 4th District of Bradley County. She is running against Representative Scott DesJarlais for the U.S. House of Representatives. And regardless of who you're voting for, I encourage everyone to vote.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, David.
oh, thank you. Be looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
David, who do we have next week?
Oh, next week we have, I know one of them is Dr. Bill Green from Lee University, the music department, and he's going to talk about the old First Baptist Church, or as it's now called, Pangle Hall, and what they're going to be doing with it. And he's also going to, I'm wondering, Angela, if violence from the NFL is spilling over into music, because he carries around that little stick, you know, and he waves it at all of his musicians. And I'm just curious if
It's to inspire them. It's his magic Harry Potter wand is what that is.
oh, he doesn't hit them.
No.
Okay.
It's an inspirational wave.
Oh, okay. Well, I was
I get a little worried, weren't
getting
you?
a little curious. And he'll be on at 10 o'clock, and our 9 o'clock guest will be Joe Wilmuth, and he's a Constitutional Party candidate for the Senate, U.S. Senate.
Oh, terrific.
So-
Terrific. Here in the studio with us.
Phone call.
Or phone call.
Yep.
Good. That's good too.
Yep. Have a phone call.
Happy to have
So I'll get to answer the phone twice.
you. You will?
Yeah.
Oof, you're an expert now, though.
Golly.
You're an expert. Well, thank you to all our guests today. Listen in with David Davis and Angela Miner.
All right, you done?
I'm done.
I'm done. See you next Thursday.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Guns, guns, and more guns. That's right, folks. U.S. Money Shops has just received a large shipment of pre-owned Glock 22s, 23